My husband didn't come to the hospital after my car accident. Client meeting in Denver, he texted. His business partner said I'd be fine. I woke up 3 days later with a fractured skull and cracked ribs, and the paramedic was holding a phone that wasn't mine. She said, "A woman left this, told me to give it to you only if your husband never showed up." I unlocked it slowly. The screech of metal tearing through metal. That's the last thing I remember before everything went dark. I'd been driving home from my photography studio, the same route I'd taken for 3 years, when the truck ran the red light. They told me later that I'd been lucky. Lucky. The word felt obscene when I could barely breathe without pain shooting through my torso. I'd managed to gasp out Derek's name to the first responders, my voice barely a whisper as they cut me out of the wreckage. My phone had been destroyed in the impact, shattered into pieces somewhere in the twisted metal. "Call my husband," I'd begged. "Derek Thompson. He needs to know." The paramedic, a woman with kind eyes and steady hands named Jennifer, had nodded and promised they would reach him. I'd clung to that promise as they loaded me into the ambulance, as the sirens wailed through Seattle's evening traffic, as the ER doctors shouted medical terms I couldn't process. Derek would come. He had to come. We'd been married for 5 years, together for 7. He'd promised me forever on our wedding day, standing under those cherry blossoms in Volunteer Park. He'd held my hand through my mother's funeral 2 years ago. He'd be there. But when I first opened my eyes in the ICU, the chair beside my bed was empty. The nurse who checked my vitals had that practiced look of someone delivering bad news gently. "Your husband was notified," she said carefully. "He said he's in Denver for business. He'll try to catch a flight tomorrow." Try. That single word lodged in my chest like a piece of glass. I drifted in and out of consciousness for 3 days. Concussion protocol, they called it. Each time I surfaced, I'd look for Derek's face, listen for his voice. Each time, there was only the beep of monitors and the quiet shuffle of medical staff. On the 3rd day, when I finally stayed awake for more than an hour, paramedic Jennifer came to check on me. It wasn't standard procedure, but she'd been the one to pull me from the car, and she said she liked to follow up on her critical cases. "I have something for you," she said, her voice low. She glanced at the door before pulling a smartphone from her jacket pocket. It was newer than mine had been, in a plain black case. "A woman came by the accident scene about an hour after we got you out. Said she'd been following the emergency scanner. She gave me this and made me promise to give it to you. But only if your husband didn't show up." My heart rate monitor betrayed my sudden anxiety. What woman? Who was she? Jennifer shook her head. She didn't give a name. Mid-30s, dark hair, looked like she'd been crying. But her exact words were, "If Derek Thompson doesn't come to this hospital, give Maya this phone. Tell her I'm sorry I didn't warn her sooner. Tell her to read everything." The phone felt heavy in my trembling hands. The screen showed a single notification. 47 new messages. "I'll give you privacy," Jennifer said softly. "Press the call button if you need anything." "And Maya? Whatever's on that phone, whatever you learn, you didn't get it from me. Understood?" I nodded, unable to speak. After she left, I stared at the locked screen. The background was a photo of 2 young women, maybe in their early 20s, arms around each other, laughing at some beach I didn't recognize. One of them looked vaguely familiar in a way I couldn't place. I swiped to unlock it. No password. The Messages app was already open. The first message made my blood run cold. "My name is Rachel Kim. You don't know me, but you knew my sister. Her name was Lily Thompson. She was Derek's first wife. And everything you've been told about how she died is a lie." I'd heard about Lily exactly twice in 5 years of marriage. The first time was on our 3rd date, when Derek had gotten quiet over dinner and finally admitted he'd been married before. She'd struggled with depression, he'd said, his voice heavy with old grief. Took her own life 3 years into their marriage. It had destroyed him, he told me, made him afraid to love again. Until he met me. The second time was at our wedding, when his mother had pulled me aside and warned me to be patient with Derek's moods. "He's been through so much with poor Lily," she'd whispered. "Sometimes he just needs space." I'd never questioned it. Never thought to dig deeper. Derek had seemed so genuinely wounded by the loss that I'd made it my mission to heal him, to show him he could trust love again. Now, lying in a hospital bed with my husband somewhere in Denver on business while I recovered from a near-fatal accident alone, I read message after message from a dead woman's sister. Lily didn't kill herself. Derek staged it to look like suicide. I've spent 5 years gathering proof. He did to her exactly what he's doing to you. The isolation. The control. The way he makes you doubt your own reality. Check the life insurance. He increased your policy 6 months ago, didn't he? Lily's policy was $750,000. Yours is $800,000. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. The insurance. Derek had brought home those papers in March, said his financial advisor recommended it. Just being responsible, he'd said with that warm smile I'd fallen in love with. Making sure you're protected if anything happens to me. I'd signed without reading carefully, trusting him completely. He handled all our finances. Made sense, he'd said, since he was the CFO of a tech startup and I was just a photographer. Just a photographer. Those 3 words had become his favorite way to diminish my work, so subtle I'd barely noticed the pattern. The next messages contained photos. Bank statements showing Derek had drained Lily's personal accounts in the months before her death. Medical records showing she'd gone to the ER twice for accidents. A fall down the stairs, a bad reaction to medication Derek had given her. Screenshots of text messages between Derek and someone named Victoria about handling the Lily situation. I was only 19 when Lily died, Rachel's message continued. A sophomore in college. I knew something was wrong, but I had no power, no resources, no proof. The police ruled it suicide. Everyone believed Derek's story about her depression. Her own therapist testified that she'd been suicidal. But Lily wasn't depressed until she married Derek. I watched him break her down, piece by piece. She was a violinist, Maya. First chair in the Seattle Symphony. Derek convinced her to quit, said the evening rehearsals were straining their marriage. Then her friends started disappearing because Derek didn't like them. Then her family, because we stressed her out. By the end, she was so isolated, so broken, that when she died, no one was surprised. Everyone said they'd seen it coming. But I knew. I knew. I scrolled faster, my breath coming in short gasps that made my broken ribs scream. There were photos of Derek with another woman, dated 2 months before Lily's death. Screenshots of him researching sedatives and suicide methods. A recording, audio only, of Derek on the phone with his lawyer discussing what would happen to his assets in the event of my wife's unfortunate passing. I couldn't prove murder then, Rachel wrote. I was just a kid, and Derek's lawyer was better than any lawyer I could afford. But I got a degree in forensic accounting. Spent 5 years building a career. And I've been watching Derek ever since. When he married you 3 years ago, I knew I had to act. But I needed time. Time to document the pattern. Time to gather evidence that would actually hold up in court. Time to get close enough to understand his methods. I work for Hartwell Financial Consulting now. 3 months ago, your husband's company hired us to audit their accounts. He doesn't know I'm Lily's sister. I changed my last name, look different than I did at 19. But I've been in meetings with him, Maya. I've watched him operate. And I've seen the same pattern emerging. The same isolation tactics. The way he's positioned himself to benefit from your death. My vision blurred with tears. This couldn't be real. Derek loved me. He'd been distant lately, yes, but that was work stress. The late nights at the office, the business trips, the way he'd started snapping at me for small things, that was just the pressure of his job, not a calculated campaign to destroy me. But even as I tried to rationalize it, memories started surfacing with new clarity. The way Derek had suggested I close my photography studio last year because it was barely breaking even. The friends who'd stopped calling after Derek made pointed comments about how they were bad influences. My sister in Portland, who I hadn't visited in 18 months because Derek always had a reason I couldn't go. The phone in my hands had more messages. I know this is overwhelming. I know you don't want to believe it. Lily didn't want to believe it either, even at the end. But Maya, you had a car accident 3 days ago and your husband is in Denver. Do you really believe that's a coincidence? I've been tracking his calendar. He had no client meeting in Denver. He's been there with Victoria Hammond, the same woman he was seeing when Lily was alive. I have photos, timestamps, hotel receipts charged to his corporate card. And Maya, the accident. I've been monitoring police scanners because I knew something was coming. The truck that hit you. Stolen. The driver fled the scene. They still haven't found him, but I found something interesting in Derek's accounts. A $15,000 cash withdrawal 2 weeks ago. No record of where it went. The monitor beside my bed started beeping faster. A nurse rushed in, but I waved her away, my eyes locked on the screen. I can't prove he arranged the accident. Not yet. But the pattern, Maya. The pattern is identical. Lily had an accident that put her in the hospital a month before she died. She recovered, got more careful. Then 2 weeks later, she was found dead in your bathtub, the bathtub you use now, in the house Derek kept after her death, with enough sleeping pills in her system to kill a horse. The medical examiner ruled it suicide. But Lily would have had to swallow 60 pills. 60. Without leaving a note. Without saying goodbye to me. Without any final message. My sister, who wrote me letters every week even when Derek tried to stop her. I was going to be sick. The nurse came back, concerned, but I shook my head violently. I needed to finish reading. I'm leaving you this phone because I don't know if you'll survive whatever Derek has planned. But if you do, if you're reading this, then I'm giving you a choice. You can ignore all of this, go back to him, hope I'm wrong. Or you can meet me. Let me show you everything I've found. Let me help you the way I couldn't help Lily. There's a cafe on Madison Street called Zeitgeist Coffee. I'll be there every day this week from 2 to 4 p.m. I have a folder with your name on it. Evidence. Documentation. A way out. But Maya, if you choose to meet me, you can't tell Derek. You can't give him any warning. Men like him, when they know they're caught, they accelerate their plans. Lily made that mistake. She confronted him about the affair. 2 weeks later, she was dead. I'm sorry I didn't reach you sooner. I'm sorry I couldn't prevent the accident. But I can help you now. If you'll let me. The final message was just an address and a name. Rachel Kim, forensic accountant, Hartwell Financial Consulting. I set the phone down with trembling hands. My mind was racing, trying to reconcile the Derek I knew. The man who brought me coffee in bed, who'd held me while I cried over my mother's death, who'd proposed on the beach at sunset, with the monster Rachel described. But even as I tried to defend him, I couldn't ignore the facts. He wasn't here. I'd been in a coma for 3 days, and he was in Denver with another woman. He'd increased my life insurance without explaining why. He'd been systematically cutting me off from my support system for years. The door opened. I quickly slid the phone under my blanket, my heart pounding. It was just Jennifer, the paramedic, back with fresh bandages. She saw my face and immediately understood. You read it all, she said quietly. I nodded, not trusting my voice. What are you going to do? I don't know, I whispered. I don't know what's real anymore. Jennifer checked my vitals in silence, then leaned in close. For what it's worth, I've been a paramedic for 12 years. I've seen a lot of accidents, and I've seen a lot of spouses react to those accidents. She paused. In 12 years, I've never had a husband not come when his wife was in critical condition. Not once. Until Derek Thompson. After she left, I lay there staring at the ceiling. My phone, the new phone, Rachel's phone, vibrated with one more message. I know you're confused. I know you're scared. I was too. But Lily used to say that fear is just love with nowhere to go. You loved Derek. Maybe you still do. But love shouldn't leave you alone in a hospital bed. Love shouldn't take out life insurance policies and plan business trips when you're fighting for your life. Real love shows up. And Maya, he didn't show up. The message ended with a photo. 2 women at that same beach from the lock screen. But this photo was different. They were older, maybe mid-20s. The woman I'd thought looked familiar was holding a violin. Her face radiant with joy. The other woman, younger, darker hair, had her arm around her sister protectively. Lily and Rachel. Before Derek. Before the isolation and the control and the death stage to look like suicide. I was looking at a ghost. And that ghost was trying to save my life. My doctor discharged me 5 days after the accident. I had strict orders to rest, physical therapy scheduled, pain medication that made me foggy. Derek finally came home on day 4. Full of apologies about flight delays and crucial meetings he couldn't reschedule. He brought flowers, expensive roses from the same florist he always used, and hovered over me with what looked like genuine concern. I'm so sorry I couldn't get here sooner, he said, his hand stroking my hair with practiced tenderness. You know how these tech investor meetings are. Millions of dollars on the line. I couldn't just walk away. But I could walk away from death, apparently. I didn't say that. I just nodded and smiled weakly and let him settle me into our bed, the bed I now knew he'd once shared with Lily in the house where she'd died, surrounded by furniture he'd kept from his first marriage like trophies. Everything looked different now. The photos on our walls, all carefully selected by Derek. The bank statements I'd never really examined. The way our bedroom door had a lock on the outside that Derek had installed for security after a break-in in our neighborhood that I'd never actually verified happened. The phone Rachel gave me was hidden in my camera bag, which Derek never touched because he thought photography was a hobby rather than real work. For 3 days, I played the role of recovering wife while Derek played concerned husband. But I watched him now. Really watched. The way he controlled my medication schedule, bringing me pills at specific times and standing there until I swallowed them. The way he'd helpfully handled all the insurance paperwork without showing me any of it. The way he suggested I shouldn't drive for a while, maybe give up my studio lease since I'd be recovering for months anyway. Lily's words, coming out of Derek's mouth, wrapped in concern instead of malice. On the 4th day home, Derek announced another trip to Denver. Just a quick overnight, he assured me. I wouldn't go if it wasn't absolutely necessary. But you're doing so well, and Mrs. Chen next door can check on you. Mrs. Chen was 78 and mostly deaf. Some caretaker. After Derek left for the airport, I waited an hour, then pulled out Rachel's phone. I'd been too afraid to respond before, too uncertain. But I wasn't uncertain anymore. I typed, Zeitgeist Coffee, tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll be there. The response was instant. Thank you. Thank you for trusting me. Come alone. Tell no one. I'll have everything ready. The next afternoon, I told Mrs. Chen I was going to a follow-up appointment with my doctor. She nodded absently, already back to her game show. I drove my old Honda. Derek had wanted me to sell it, said we only needed his BMW to Madison Street, my ribs aching with every breath. Zeitgeist was a small place, dim and quiet on a Tuesday afternoon. I spotted her immediately. The woman from the photos, older now, maybe 34, with that same dark hair and protective intensity in her eyes. She stood when she saw me, and for a long moment we just looked at each other. Two women connected by the same predator, separated by 5 years and a death that maybe wasn't a death at all. Maya, she said softly. I'm Rachel. I'm so glad you came. We sat at a corner table, away from the windows. Rachel had a leather folder in front of her, thick with documents. But she didn't open it immediately. Instead, she just looked at me with those eyes that had seen too much. How much do you want to know? She asked. Everything, I said. I need to know everything. Rachel took a deep breath and opened the folder. What she showed me over the next 2 hours destroyed any remaining illusions I had about my marriage. Bank statements showing Derek had been funneling money into accounts I didn't know existed. Insurance documents proving he'd taken out policies on both Lily and me for nearly identical amounts. Text messages between Derek and Victoria Hammond going back 6 years, starting a full year before Lily died and continuing through my entire relationship with him. He's been planning this for years, Rachel explained, her voice clinical in the way people get when they're talking about unbearable things. Derek's startup is failing. Has been for 2 years. He's been using investor money to fund his lifestyle, and it's about to come crashing down. He needs a way out that leaves him looking like a victim